The sun's magnetic field has reversed. We have entered the solar maximum, and this could bring about drastic changes. The sun is now sending storms more violent than ever before, and fears are growing on Earth that a final solar storm could destroy our satellites. Space entrepreneurs like Elon Musk are preparing for the worst, and NASA is also issuing warnings almost daily about new dangers from the sun. Never before have we experienced as many violent solar storms as in the last few months. We are in the year 2024 on the way to the solar maximum. Researchers do not expect the most violent activity on the sun until 2025. Considering that some satellites are already at their limit, the year 2025 could bring some surprises. In the summer of 2024, Elon Musk posted images of the stress curves of his Starlink satellites with dismay. The brand new satellite network had only just managed to withstand the bombardment from the sun. But what happens next? Scientists predict the absolute peak of the current solar cycle for 2025. Among the forecasts is a horror storm that could plunge us all into unimaginable chaos. We have reached the solar maximum. It has never been as bad as it is now. The sun has reached a level of activity that is causing severe storms almost every week. NASA has confirmed the reversal of the sun's magnetic field. These changes are not unusual for the sun, but they are happening within an 11-year cycle instead of 22.5 years. A side effect of these pole jumps is violent upheaval in the lower layers of the sun. The current solar cycle, called Solar Cycle 25, brings particularly intense movements on the surface of the sun. On May 1, 2024, a strangely large sunspot region appeared, named Active Region 3664. This sunspot grew to 17 times the size of the Earth in just a few days. The spot was created as a result of the internal upheavals. The spots appear darker to us than the rest of the sun due to cooling in the areas of the spots. In the lower part, a kind of cavity is created by powerful currents. Layers collapse, forming a slight dent, which is then cooler than the surrounding area. These phenomena are accompanied by intense solar flares and coronal mass ejections, referred to as CMEs for short. During the flares or ejections, large amounts of charged particles are expelled from the solar surface and blown in our direction as powerful currents. When the particles hit the Earth's magnetic field, they are collected at the poles. The Earth has an excellent protective device. These work like collection bags for particles trapped in layers of the Earth's atmosphere. Our home planet swirls the particles back and forth a little until they have lost their charge. We see this spectacle as auroras. Normally, the wonderful lights only appear in the polar regions. Since this year, everything has changed and we saw auroras in regions where they do not normally appear. One of the strongest geomagnetic storms in the last 500 years caused impressive auroras visible as far away as the Mediterranean, Australia, and Hawaii. NASA is afraid. The strongest solar flare in 7 years has experts at NASA trembling for the safety of the ISS in space and numerous satellites. Solar storms can severely disrupt technical equipment in space. If important supply systems on the ISS fail, it can become tight for the astronauts. Stars of space shuttles or supply shuttles are also hampered during the storms. If important satellites fail, we will no longer be able to receive up-to-date data from space, and our communication systems could collapse. The damage could be enormous. At the moment, no one knows how safe NASA's technical facilities really are. It is a daily tremor and fear at NASA, but also at companies like SpaceX and other companies and nations that have placed important satellites in space. In October 2024, the shock came. The sun produced an X9.5 flare. We have to expect much more severe storms. Geomagnetic storms of level G4 could then be the order of the day. Storms of this strength significantly impact radio communication and can trigger the appearance of the aurora borealis at unusual latitudes. Practically speaking, our sun goes through a cycle every 11 years, first with low activity and then with increased activity. The number of sunspots increases, solar radiation becomes more intense, and the rhythm of magnetic field reversal changes. The sun cycles have been known since the late 18th century. The Carrington event was a solar storm of epic proportions and led to intensive research into solar activity and its influence on modern civilization. On Earth, the violent solar storm of 1859 paralyzed the still-young telegraph network and caused confusion and panic worldwide. The sky burned for days, sparks flew from technical equipment, and people were afraid. The spook lasted for days to weeks. Since then, we humans have known about the dangers of the sun for our modern civilization. Animals and plants probably do not mind the currents, but electrical systems can suffer a collapse. Today, we depend on electricity 100%. If the worldwide power supply and satellite-based communication networks were to collapse, we could face disaster. The influence on Earth will increase. NASA recently raised the interesting question of whether increased solar activity could affect the Earth's global temperature. We are on the brink of a climate catastrophe, and people are wondering whether extreme solar activity can exacerbate the problems. The increased radiation could theoretically disrupt electrical systems and satellite communications. However, no effects on the climate have been observed to date. The charge of the particles that reach us from the sun is not so dramatic that it would cause the atmosphere to warm. Temperatures and weather would most likely remain largely unaffected by violent solar storms. The only things affected are satellites, technical installations in Earth orbit, and sensitive electrical systems on Earth. However, experts are still not sure whether solar storms of this magnitude might have a disruptive influence on nature, animals, or humans, or whether they might somehow accelerate the greenhouse effect. NASA has confided in the best experts on the planet to address this pressing question. The question remains as to how we can protect ourselves. The answer is simple: not at all. We can't do anything about the ejections from the sun and flares. We can only adjust our forecasts for climate change and protect our electrical systems. Our world has changed since 1859. At that time, there was just a nationwide telegraph network and the first generators that produced electricity. People did not yet know a power grid as we know it today. Light bulbs, refrigerators, or electricity-dependent ATMs and supermarkets. The famous Carrington event is considered one of the strongest solar storms ever recorded. Due to the breakdown of the communication system, it took a long time for the news of the solar storm to go around the world. In remote parts of the USA, nobody knew what had happened. At that time, mainly the North American continent was affected, when sparks flew from the telegraphs and caused fires, and the sky was swarming and bathed in fantastic colors. People thought it was some kind of apocalypse. Only the British scientist Richard Carrington had observed that a dark spot had appeared on the sun before the state of emergency. Carrington correctly combined the two and sent the news of his discovery around the world. If we were hit by a storm on the scale of the Carrington event today, our civilization would be on the ground for a few days. Without electricity and functioning communication systems, chaotic conditions would break out. No one knows when the day will come when the sun will create such a storm again. It's scary to think that a medium-sized burp from the sun can bring our culture to the brink of collapse. For the sun, particle ejections like the one in 1859 are a piece of cake. Researchers suspect that severe storms like this have occurred throughout Earth's history, but there were no records, or people didn't notice much because there were no electrical devices. Researchers suspect that some very colorful descriptions of fire angels in the sky or religious ideas of a burning sky may be related to previous violent solar storms. Not even 200 years have passed from 1859 to today. The sun could produce such storms again and again. Researchers are trying hard to record and predict the cycles of solar activity. Nevertheless, experts warn against making hasty promises. After all, we have only been observing the sun intensively for a very short time. Calculating over centuries, we have no idea what cycles our star is familiar with and whether flares of the magnitude of the Carrington storm follow any kind of rhythm. The wonder of our Earth's magnetic field. Do you ever think about how great it is that our planet has a magnetic field? Probably not. We enjoy the wonder of our home planet and all the luxuries the Earth offers every day without even thinking about it. It's only when solar storms or other catastrophes threaten that we realize how vulnerable we are in this world. Our planet's magnetic field is generated within the Earth. The hot molten iron core reacts with the cooler outer layers, and the resulting upheaval and friction create a magnetic field. This encompasses the entire globe and forms centers at the north and south poles. There, the bombardment of particles from the sun is intercepted, and normally this happens as a matter of course. We humans can even enjoy magnificent northern lights. But what if our magnetic field were overloaded or collapsed completely? We would have a serious problem. We can tell you at least that much. Not only would the particle streams hit us harder, but without the magnetic field, the sun would probably destroy our atmosphere within a few thousand years to such an extent that life would become impossible. Mars has no magnetic field and, therefore, no atmosphere. In our neighboring star system, Proxima Centauri, the exoplanet Proxima b has raised expectations that we have found an Earth-like planet outside the solar system. But then researchers observe how the star sent such a violent flare to the planet that life and an atmosphere there are very unlikely. Subscribe now to our channel Digital Discoveries. The best videos are yet to come.